Hello, host Eric here, host Talking with Famous People, and I'm here with some friends in the room, including famous people waiting for name 110000001, Bo Explivsit, Milkman, and Zack Zack Attack. So I thought I'd talk today a little bit about what different types fear. I was inspired by Zachary's earlier video on social anxiety for the INTP. And I was struck by the curiosity about the manner in which each type experiences anxieties or fears or things they dread or matters such as that. So I think my initial thoughts on the ENTP are that what we fear most or dread most or fight against most is probably something along the lines of the condemnation of others. I feel in general, I think the ENTP feels very thoroughly judged. And judged from early on and continually judged for their whole lives. Now, I don't know if that's because of some deficit in our cognitive function stack that makes us feel that way, or if it's actually because society is judging us a lot. It's hard for me to tell, but it seems that the ENTP is kind of on constant lookout for being judged and ready to throw down about it. That's not usually the sign of good mental health, I would say. To be constantly on the lookout for somebody who's throwing shade or whatever, as they say nowadays. I think that's what that means. It's not a good way or a sensible way to go about life, but like I said, I'm not sure where exactly it emerges from. It's probably a combination of both. On the one hand, we don't understand feelings well, and so we run afoul of other people's feelings frequently, and a lot of times face a certain amount of condemnation for that. So the end up of it all is that we're fighty. We're fussy and we're fighty. We don't like being called out on our shit, and we find ourselves being called out on our shit a lot, and or not being called out on it, but calling ourselves out on it a lot, and blaming others for calling us out even when they haven't called us out on it. There's a certain self-awareness of the ENTP that there's some hypocrisy implicit in our behaviors, that we aren't consistent enough to be busting other people's chops about their own inconsistencies. But at the same time, we have a very powerful feeling like, well, we didn't start this shit. We were just going about our business and everybody gave us grief. And so, as a consequence, we manifest as this oddly childish intellect warrior type person that can be highly effective or highly ineffective, that can be, that's why we're so subject to critique, is that we're so, I was going to say unpredictable, but I think a better word is unreliable. And that, more than anything else, is the source of a lot of our behavioral quirks, is that we know we're unreliable, we hate being unreliable, we think of ourselves as being undisciplined and hate ourselves for it, but at the end of the day, we are ourselves, and so we tend to prioritize our own interests over some idealized vision of perfection, and that means a lot of pushback and a lot of fighting and a lot of whatnot. So I wonder if, Lorenz Walker, you had anything to talk about regarding the social anxiety thing, if you think that's an issue for you, or if you feel as an INTP perhaps you've got some other things that you worry about more, or what's the deal with your type?
I felt similar to Zachary in that case, because if anything, if there is there's a plan to do something, and it's new, then yeah, there's going to be a lot of anxiety up to that time. Like probably most of my being is going to be directed towards like the anxiety of anticipating the future event.
And preparing for it.
Yeah, at least mentally.
Yeah, mentally preparing for it. Well, it's funny when Zachary was getting ready to go to Utah to work with my school and me for the national tournament. He was very, very concerned about whether or not he would be able to do the job judging well enough. And I kept reassuring him. I'm like, look, a lot of the people judging are just like parents and stuff that don't really know anything, and you're going to do a much better job judging than they will. But it didn't really seem to assuage his concerns much, and I found that odd because, I mean, I guess it's because of the thinking thing, right? So instead of thinking about possibilities first when he goes there, like, oh, this could be fun or that could be fun or this could be fun, he's thinking first, and he's saying, well, I need to make sure that my judgment is correct about everything. And then he thinks about possibilities about what could go wrong instead of what could go right. And I've noticed this is a difference between Zachary and me in general. Like he said on an earlier video, Eric says, well, let's just make more videos. It'll bury the bad ones. And Zachary says, yeah, but it'll bury the good ones. You know? So I think that's just an indicator of a preference for thinking over perceiving first. You know, it's like you guys want to know going in, whereas ENTP probably isn't thinking about that very much. You know. So
yeah,
what?
I think they anticipate it a lot.
So can you tie that in then, link that to INTP procrastination issues? It seems like a fairly straightforward link.
Possibly.
Dwight, can you not put that on right now, please?
I have to go to the birthday party soon. I just have to dry my cheeks. Once my cheeks are dry, though, I'll turn it
You're
on.
turning on a heater in here,
Yeah.
where I don't have a fan on because I'm recording.
Okay, it'll be like 15 minutes.
Okay. Is that a cause of procrastination? I mean, is that like if you want to know for certain what's gonna be before you do it, or what?
Yeah, I would say so. Mentally deconstructing it and maybe figuring it out, getting rid of some of the
Uncertainties?
yeah.
Okay. Do we have any other...
Making sure you know something before you do it.
Right, making sure you're aware of where you're going before you actually go there, which is not something that concerns the ENTP too much. Callum,
Yeah.
I believe you're an INTP as well, right? Or have I mistyped you here? If any of the other people in the room would like to comment on this, oh, Callum's an ENTP. Well, what do you think about? I think you arrived after I gave my little spiel on ENTP difficulties. Zachary earlier this morning made a video on social anxiety in the INTP, and I indicated that I think the ENTP, their primary concern is, their biggest fear is the condemnation of others. I wonder if you have any thoughts on that, or care to expand, or offer any other input. I think that's why we're so fighty, right? It's like people are always giving us pushback. People are always busting our chops about shit. Explicit. Do you have any notions? I don't know what type you are. I've never spoken with you before. If you'd like to have any input into this, feel free to chat or turn on your mic either way, or camera, whatever you like. Zach attack, same applies to you. If you feel as though the ISFP has any particular fears or anxieties, I'd love to hear what they are. Are you talking, Zack Zack Attack? I hear sounds but don't actually hear any voice. Okay, well, unfortunately, we really can't hear you. But I see here a comment from Explicit. INTP mainly just trying to be perfect, procrastination, doubting every step while going through something. Right. Well, and I think that to a certain extent that's a problem for the ENTP when he's younger, especially, is because of our fear of the social condemnation of others. We get really like fussy about putting shit out there because we have a lot of weight put into our anticipated impacts of that. Like, oh, I think people are really going to like this. And we put it out and either nobody responds or somebody hates it or something like that. And it has the potential to really eat us up inside unless we take on an approach like I took on, I think, which is, well, just bury the bad shit. Bury the bad shit with more stuff. That liberated me a lot. And Callum says he stopped interacting with people because he had so much difficulty with the fact that people are somewhat antagonistic to our nature. It's frustrating, it's hard, especially when we want so much to be liked. It makes it extremely difficult for us to figure out a way that works, perhaps. I would advise to any ENTP going through that difficulty, the answer is more, not less. The answer is a bigger pool, not a smaller pool. And that it's only by making all those mistakes that we can get past some of them. Any other thoughts on this notion of fears or anxiety from people who are self-identifying as one of the types? If not, I'd like to go on a little bit and talk about some of the types not here represented, but that I know fairly well. I think the INFJ type, what they fear most of all, is that you will see their innermost self and believe it to be ordinary. And see them as fragile and human like the rest of us. They are quite enamored with the notion of not needing, and I think that handicaps them a little bit. I mean, I think they get a lot of their needs from their intimate relationships, and then they don't have to seek a lot from others outside of those relationships. So that may be part of the reason I perceive it as such, having never been in an intimate relationship with an INFJ. However, I will say that regardless of whether they get those needs met internally like that or not, INFJs, it's cool. You guys have a lot of people's backs a lot of the times, and you're looking out for people, and especially individual people in your life. Know that those people out in your life have your back too, and it's okay to reveal your own insecurities sometimes. It's okay to reveal your own fears. ENTPs especially will be right there next to you being like, whatever rawness you have that you're afraid to expose, here's all of mine, Okay, INFJ won't always have your back to think you're a screw up. I know this. I know. However, if you don't give up on them, they probably won't burn any bridges. And you may have to, especially if you're an ENTP, you may understand more clearly than they do, because you understand more broadly than they do, and they understand more narrowly than you do. And they're probably right about their narrow interpretation of whatever it is. But the reality is, that's different, Callum. If you're talking about an intimate relationship, I'm not quite sure how those things play out. Those are going to play out differently than non-intimate relationships, necessarily, because it's you only get one, right? You get multiple friends, you only get one intimate partner. usually, at a time, usually for most people. So that's my feelings on the INFJ, is that they're mostly afraid that you're going to see inside them and realize they're human like the rest of us. I'd also like to talk about the fears of the ISFJ type, because I feel I understand those well. I think it's, again, understanding fears as a matter of scope. ENTP fears are general. We're afraid that people in general are going to condemn us, not specific people. Although we may be afraid of that in specific instances. But in general, it's like we want everybody to agree that this is great. Or we want everybody to agree that we're a good guy. Or we want everybody to agree that we're likable. And we're not so much fixated on individual relationships when we're thinking about it in the abstract anyway. ISFJ, on the other hand, is entirely fear-based regarding individual people and their concerns that their family members aren't on top of their shit and stuff like that, and making sure that everybody's attending to stuff they have to attend to get through life comfortably. That is a very valuable fear to have on your team. Somebody who's really looking out for you like that, you know? And who's worried about the maintenance of the self through time as a priority. They're worried about their bodies, they're worried about getting sick, they're worried about eating well, they're worried about shit like that. They're worried a lot. I'm not so much worried as I am terrified. I'm either perfectly fine or I'm in a state of terror. They're just worried all the time. They're worried about everything. So you want to have an ISFJ on your team for sure. You'd like to have one if you're an ENTP. You'd like to have one as an intimate partner. I'm still waiting for the flood of, 35-year-old ISFJ women to come pouring after me. We're right here, Eric. Pick from among us. It still hasn't happened. I know. I'm shocked. I am shocked too. Where are all those ISFJ women? They're like, whatever you do, if you're an ISFJ woman, do not go on Talking with Famous People. Anyway, regardless of that, ISFJs are very worry-warts. ESFJs can be a little worry-warty as well, with the SI in the second slot. They're very concerned about how they're perceived by others. That's their primary thing, is that they're going to be perceived as sloppy mess. That makes them kind of a bad mesh with the ENTP, because they really want to craft everyone's perceptions of their family, and if you're an ENTP, you're not necessarily going to be super cooperative in that. So those are the types I thought I'd talk about today on that. I don't think I want to go any further. I don't feel like I've got any great insight into the other types' fears at the moment. So, any other thoughts? We've got INFP listener Hami. Oh, Hami's here. Hami, you want to talk about INTJ fears? We've been talking about INTP. The motivation of this was Jack's video on INTP social anxiety. What is it that INTJs fear? Being wrong? I don't know. Well, maybe Hami's not paying attention. Okay, well, I would guess that the INTJ mostly fears committing to a wrong course. Would be my guess. So, thanks for watching Talk with Famous People. What? Do you agree? Oh, cool. Thanks, Hami. Hami agrees with that. Thanks for watching Talk with Famous People.